It's NHL award season, and ballots are due by the Professional Hockey Writers Association 5 weeks from today. To talk about who's going to be receiving the NHL's hardware, we're going to break it down on this week's edition of The First Line. He's Pete Blackburn. I'm Frank Seravalli of dailyfaceoff.com. Pete, I do have a trophy vote this year, but wanted to work through it. Connor McDavid, we know he's taking home the Hart Trophy. He probably could have stopped playing in January and still won the award as the NHL's most valuable player. Does it matter at all to you who finishes second, and who would your runner-up be?
No, I mean, there's been no debate for a long time, like you mentioned, so I haven't even thought about second place all that much. I don't think it really matters. There's no conversation to be had. But, if you were gun to my head, forced me to give you an answer, about a month ago, I probably would have said Tage Thompson based on his individual impact to the Sabres and pushing them towards the playoffs and how fun of a team they've been and how fun he's been. Right now, I guess... I would say maybe Mikko Rantanen, just based off of how the impact that he had in keeping the Avs afloat. And I think there was a point this season where he had like 40% of their total goals. So he's been amazing for them and kind of keeping them afloat all year. So I'd give him probably a second place vote.
Yeah, Nathan MacKinnon is actually ahead of him in the points race, but I think almost everyone on that Avs team would agree that without Gabriel Landeskog, that Mikko Rantanen has been their most valuable player this year, especially with Cale Makar hurt as well. I would say right now, if the Florida Panthers are able to sneak into the final playoff spot, Matthew Tkachuk, that trade has been worth it on just about every front from the Florida Panthers' perspective to get a franchise player in the fold and signed to a long-term contract. Tkachuk has 31 more points than his next closest Panthers teammate, which is just crazy number to think about when you think about a team that won the President's Trophy last year. I know they're totally different, but 31 points ahead of Alexander Barkov?
Yeah, that's insane. You said that to me, and I kind of blew my mind just based off of... I didn't realize that Matthew Tkachuk was having that much more of an individual impact than anybody else on the Florida Panthers this year.
Yeah, but they got to make the playoffs, though, I think, in order to get my runner-up vote. Speaking of the playoff debate, does it matter at all when considering the Norris Trophy, which is awarded to the NHL's best all-around defenseman? It does not say most valuable defenseman, that the San Jose Sharks are so far out of the playoff chase as Erik Karlsson has had this all-world season?
Well, I think that's the thing for me where I think it should matter sometimes of whether or not you make the playoffs. But when you're a team that is so far away from the playoffs, near the very bottom of the league, and to still be in the Norris conversation, leading the Norris conversation, I think that's even more of a credit to the season that Erik Karlsson is having. Because if he was on a good team, his numbers might be significantly better than they are right now. And I know that people love to hold his defense against him, but I still think, there's a conversation to be had about driving play offensively and making sure the puck ends up in the other team's net as opposed to your own. I think there's equal value in that a lot of the time. So for me, Erik Karlsson's a runaway here, and I think that the Sharks being towards the bottom of the league helps his case more than it hurts it.
Yeah, I don't want to say that they're empty calorie points that he's scoring. He is second in the NHL in even strength points, and he's third in the league in assists. But for me, it's not even so much how far out of the playoff chase the Sharks are. To me, it's kind of going back to that definition of the award, the all-around defenseman. So as I'm leaning right now at this moment in time in the middle of March, I think Josh Morrissey is actually going to get the number one vote on my ballot. He's second to Karlsson in points, on pace for 80-some points this season, exactly 82 points in 82 games played. And this explosion that we've seen from Josh Morrissey at the offensive end of the ice, he was known earlier in his career when he first started as a shutdown defenseman, someone that logged a ton of minutes against the best competition and handled himself extraordinarily well, especially for his size. So I like the all-around designation, that it's not really just for points, because we know that Morrissey plays well in his own end, but it's also because he is scoring a ton of points this year too. To see that new wrinkle added to his game, he's one of the big reasons why the Jets are on track to make the playoffs.
Well, let me ask you this question. It seems like we have this conversation about the Norris and the definition of the award every single year. So is there any appetite on your part to split that award and give out to the best offensive defenseman versus the best defensive defenseman?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things that's stuck in my craw over recent years. It almost seems like when deciding the Norris Trophy voting, everyone just goes to points by defenseman, sorts it, and then it's like, oh, here's my vote. And that's not to say that the voting process is lazy at all. It's just that that's what it's become in terms of the debate, is which defenseman can pile up the most points. I've been saying it forever, Pete. I think we should establish a new defensive defenseman award and just sort of have the Norris trend towards the offensive guys. Call it the Rod Langway Award. He's the only player in the Hockey Hall of Fame as a shutdown defenseman, someone who didn't pile up the points. It's an easy win, and then you can recognize a whole different aspect of the game. Someone who might be way more well-rounded, someone, you know, like a Jacob Slavin to see recognized year in and year out. He's not going to get to 75 or 80 points, but he's going to score 45 or 50, and he's going to be one of the best defensemen in the league.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when you consider that, you know, when you have forwards, you have awards for offensive forwards and you have an award for a defensive forward. So why not do the same for defensemen?
Okay, so for the Norris, Pete has Carlson, and I have Josh Morrissey of the Winnipeg Jets. What about Rookie of the Year? This is an interesting one because there's a kind of clear-cut skater, but I would say keep an eye on the goalies. What do you got?
Yeah, it's Matty Beniers for me, and that was my preseason pick. I'm going to stick with it. I just think that, you know, his numbers offensively aren't going to jump off the page at you. It's not super sexy in terms of the Calder race, but, you know, his impact offensively is there. You can see it in the numbers, and you can see it in his skill. What's been more impressive to me is how good he is defensively and in the full 200-foot game. Here's a guy who said he really idolizes Patrice Bergeron, and it kind of shows. And I think that that's super rare in a Calder race, right? To be like, look how defensively stout this guy is. Look how responsible he is in all three zones. I feel like a lot of the time that takes a while to develop and to really manifest in a young player. So Matty Beniers has been one of the most impressive guys to me across the league this season, not just in rookies, but just in terms of the impact that he's having in a full 200-foot game.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's a really special player, and I think you've seen a lot of that on display this season. But when you consider his overall point total, whether it ends up somewhere in the 60 range, it's sort of way more in line with the traditional and historical impact of rookies. We're so used to seeing, you know, McDavid and Matthews and all these unbelievable players come through with special seasons as a rookie. Not to say that it isn't from Beniers, but I think it just kind of opens up the door for someone like Stuart Skinner to walk in. And if you're talking on pure impact, how poorly Jack Campbell has played in net for the Edmonton Oilers this season. Stuart Skinner, 24 years old. Yes, I get it. This is his third technical season in the NHL in terms of games played. He had 13, and now has carried the ball for the Edmonton Oilers this season. He hadn't hit the games played maximums, so he actually remains a rookie by the true definition of the award, and therefore I think must be considered. You can't knock him for that. And if that's the case, it's hard to argue that the Edmonton Oilers are going to be in the playoffs if not for how well Skinner has played this season with a .911 save percentage. So right now, I'm leaning Skinner in the number 1 slot and Beniers number 2.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to me that Stuart Skinner is even, you know, in a rookie designation, because it seems like he's been around a while. But on the goalie topic, one of the guys that was on my radar a few months ago was Pyotr Kochetkov from Carolina, just based off of what he was doing in net for that team, in a team that kind of was searching for that answer in net, and the impact that he was having for one of the better teams in the league. Obviously, it's not going to happen anymore, but it was on my radar, and I felt like the Calder race was kind of wrapped up when he was sent down. So, you know, Stuart Skinner has a case. I would still lean Beniers, though.
Yeah, interesting. You look at goalies in general, who knows? You may need Pyotr Kochetkov again for the Carolina Hurricanes if Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta can't stay upright in their crease, which has been a trend in recent years. So Pete, maybe not the most sexy awards races this year, but certainly still to debate nonetheless, is Connor McDavid putting together one of the potentially 3 best individual seasons in NHL history.